The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting live from the UK and across the world online. You're now listening to the UK's only live alternative late night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next 3 hours, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On tonight's show, I'll be joined by Hugh Newman, author, worldwide explorer, and Megalithomaniac. Hugh has researched and wrote a book on Indigo children, and he'll also be discussing his work on earth grids and megalithic sites. On the second half of the show, I'll be speaking to the founder of Living Peace International, Eric Altman, from America. Eric believes that spiritual awakening should be simple, practical, and down to earth. So if you want to learn his techniques on distant healing and the path to spiritual awakening, stay tuned. But first, let's speak to Hugh Newman, who has researched and published a book on Indigo children. His most recent book, Earth Grids, has been published by Wooden Books. As well as organising the Megalithomania conferences, he has spoken at events in the UK, Malta, France, Peru, Egypt, Bosnia, and North America. Good morning, Hugh.
How you doing, Kevin? Good to be on the show.
Hugh, it's a pleasure to have you on here. So, Megalithomania, just explain, what is this?
Megalithomania is, it's a mania for the megaliths. It's just an obsession that people get when they start visiting megalithic sites. There's even a book written about it back in 1982 by the legendary John Michel, and he described antiquarians and archaeologists and artists who became kind of crazy about big stones, and I totally understand where they're coming from, because I've got the same bug, as you can see with it on my t-shirt. And yeah, obviously because thanks to John Michel, we got inspired by that and turned it into like a project, conference. And we did tours and workshops and lots of different things all around the world now, because megaliths are basically everywhere, and so are megalithomaniacs.
Well, I'm just going to say for the people listening at home as well, don't forget, you can tune into the live stream right now, and you can see Hugh live by just going to either radiocardiff.org and just pressing live stream, or going to themoreshow.co.uk and pressing watch live. So yes, like you say, I can see that you're wearing your t-shirt there for the conferences. And how many conferences have you held so far?
We've been doing them since 2006, really, in England. We started doing them, we did one in South Africa and Johannesburg in 2011, and also in America in 2011. And we're doing one this October the 5th and 6th, in Quincy, Massachusetts, in America, with some top megalithomaniacs, John Anthony West, Robert Schoch, and John Martineau's coming over from England as well. He was actually one of the founders of Megalithomania in England, and he's the publisher of the Wooden Book series, who my Earth Grids book came from. So yeah, we're busy, and yeah, we've been really busy since 2006, and we don't really stop.
No, because I've seen your conferences advertised in various different magazines previously, so it's a great privilege to have you on. What got you started on this path?
It was really the crop circles, actually. I'm sure your listeners will know what the crop circles are. They're, flattened areas of wheat, corn, and barley and other things in beautiful geometric circles and patterns. Now, these were something that compelled me many, many years ago, back in the 90s, and it kind of drew me into the megalithic landscape. Around Wiltshire and other places, and even in around where I'm from, near Cambridge and Wandlebury, with some magnificent formations appeared there back in 2001. And so that kind of drew me into the landscape, and I got really tuned in with earth energies, and I learned to dowse very quickly, and I could feel these energies, and I was like, okay, there's something going on here. There's something prehistoric kind of mystery which hasn't necessarily been cracked, and it was all, and this is where the Megalithomania bug really began, and it kind of opened up from there, and never looked back really. And the thing that compels me is that the whole world has megaliths. It has all these earth energy currents, it has these crop circles which appear near the sites, and whoever says anything about crop circles, they're not all man-made. They're just not. Okay, they've been around for hundreds of years. There's some that have appeared in the most obscure, remote places. Some intricate, so large and magnificent, it's kind of impossible to consider how you could even do that. They're like being imprinted from above, and it makes you wonder about the stone circles. I mean, maybe they were kind of where crop circles once appeared, even, and they were marking these kind of sacred places where the gods or the elemental force would create this circular impression on the ground. And maybe the ancients marked the spot. Who knows?
Yeah, and why? I mean, okay, so who's producing the crop circles then, in your opinion, and what's the connection, with the Megalithomania sites? I mean, what's these megalithic sites, should I say? What do you think the connection is?
Well, there's a lot of connections. I mean, there's several aspects that come into play here. Back in the earlier last century, Alexander Thom, around the 1950s and 60s, he was decoding and studying the megalithic, especially the stone circles, and he found many intricate geometries within them, and dimensions and metrology, either ancient measurement systems. He devised this whole incredible, really complicated system, and they were aligned astronomically with other sites, with notches in the distant mountains and hills, and then the same principles are at play in the crop circles. The geometry follows the same sacred geometrical principles. Even the metrology matches a lot of that of the ancient tradition, ancient of all of the stone circles and other megalithic sites like in Egypt, the cubits and things like this. And there's even certain types of geometry that had never been really documented until crop circles encoded it and actually had it hidden within the crop circle. And so you got to think, well, how, people haven't even come up with that on paper or on a computer. So suddenly it appears in the field, this new way of doing certain types of geometries. So there's something going on there. And then, since then, as people have been researching the megalithic sites and the pyramid sites and other sites around the world, there are many geometrical clues within them which haven't been noticed before. There's a lot of mathematics if people want to get into that kind of thing. If it sort of fascinates me, but it stimulates my mind, but troubles my mind as well. This whole idea of like secret mathematics within ancient sites, and was that a language? Like some people say about the crop circles, is it like a language that we've now lost? And the thing people don't realize about mathematics and geometry is that it's universal. You can go for any epoch of time, any area of space, and the same laws apply. Whereas languages don't carry that kind of longevity, and they kind of die out and get forgotten, and then we can't decode them a few hundred years later. So if you're looking into this, I mean, are other government agencies looking into this? I mean, is it what surely, if there's these mathematical equations in there and this is some sort of ancient language, surely it just can't be yourself looking into it. No, and there's a lot of people looking into it, a lot of alternative researchers who, come and speak at our conferences and come on our tours and things like that. But, I would imagine there is, this is kind of quite high knowledge is coming forth now. And who knows what? I mean, no one's contacted me from the Secret Service or anything about it, so I've got no idea about who's really doing that. But I would imagine anyone who studies the liberal arts or this kind of geometry, which would include Freemasons, of course, and different societies like that. This is their guiding principles are often based upon sacred geometry and mathematics and astronomy. And so the fact that, and that they are doing that, and also these are somehow encoded in the crop circles and in these megalithic sites, it's pretty incredible, really.
Absolutely.
You have to question it.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, well, Hugh, we're just going to take a quick break there, and we'll be right back after this.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the Moore Show website.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm joined here with Hugh Newman, and we're talking about the megalithic sites and earth rigs, and we've got so much to cover right now. Hugh, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, well, thanks for having me back.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I mean, you're a busy man, and I know your times, you're all over the place, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of travelling. That's one of my kind of passions, to realise there's a world of ancient mysteries and sights and wonder to see out there, really.
Absolutely.
And it's something I've just, late last year, I travelled around the whole mound culture area in the Ohio Valley, many different places in Indiana, Illinois, etc. And there's hundreds, it's like tens of thousands of these mounds, these geometric earthworks, using the very similar principles as what I just discussed before the break, which is the geometry, the mathematics, and also the alignments, not just like in ley lines, but also with the astronomy as well. It was very advanced, and they were using exactly the same kind of principles. And even, you can't dismiss similarities with what we get in England. But the thing about the bell culture, which kind of blows people away, and this is based on sort of fact, is that they found thousands of giant human skeletons within the mounds. Some with like this crazy bronze armor, some with double rows of teeth. We're talking like between 7 and maybe 10, 12 feet tall, some of them. And yet no one talks about that. They kind of keep it nicely quiet, and it all got dismissed and suppressed. So there's a whole mystery there which I've been investigating. And if you come further east to the whole New England, New York State area, not only do you get the same kind of giant sort of legends and discoveries and things like that, but you also get these megalithic chambers and dolmens and monoliths, and even a couple of stone circles there. So it's very exciting that just that northeastern area of like North America. Even though I'm English, I still visit there quite a lot. We're going back there in early October. We're doing a big conference there, but also we do tours there. We do like 3 days of tours, and we get access to all the local megalithic sites. A place called Gungy Wamp in Connecticut, which is pretty amazing. It's got this crazy, it's called the Hill of Tears. And there, it's actually people kind of break down and have these emotional reactions there, and or burst out laughing because of the energy there, because of the high magnetism of the rocks there, and all the geology, the compressed kind of energies, and it kind of has an effect on our consciousness. And this is the same kind of story you get in many sites, but North America is quite a surprising amount going on there. And obviously, I've also been travelling in Central and South America, and I'll happily discuss that as well.
Well, absolutely. So just to clarify a few things here, let's just, what's the difference? You've got ley and earth energies. What's the difference to begin with?
Yeah, I think this is a good question to ask, because a lot of people get mixed up with what is the difference. People think leys, these ley lines or leys, which is the proper term, coined by Alfred Watkins back in the 1920s. are actually just straight line alignments of ancient sites, whether they're churches, mounds, megaliths, holy wells, crossroads, things like this. And these are just alignments. About 4 or 5 or more constitutes a ley, L-E-Y. And they're now called ley lines because people didn't really know what a ley was, but ley kind of means line, so it's like saying lines. But a lot of people just call them ley lines now because it's easier to kind of get. Whereas these earth energies are quite different. They kind of move in kind of like snake, serpent kind of movements across the landscape. However, just to confuse matters, they kind of weave in and around sometimes these straight line alignments, and they go through the same sites. So it's almost like, where the sites mark straight to create this kind of energetic alignment, and then the energies would then sort of weave around that a bit like a caduceus, and you actually get male and female energies moving around through the landscape as well, like the famous Michael and Mary lines that go all the way across southern England. But then, just it's a straight line lays are not really anything to do with energy, but Sig Longren and other people have coined the term energy lay.
Yeah.
And so there are kind of beams of energy going across the landscape, which can be doused and picked up. People can sense them, and they sometimes are just on ley lines, on lays. Sometimes they're not. They just go through countryside, and there's no ancient sites particularly. So it just gets a bit confusing, but it's good to get a bit of classification. There's also these smaller telluric currents which kind of move around in spirals, and they kind of they go inside stone circles and bounce around and create this kind of charge. You have underground water that moves around in streams, and you have quite a few other things going on. There's several different types of grids that are everywhere. The Schneider grid, the Hartmann grid, the Curry grid. There's the UVG, the Unified Vector Geometry grid, and many others. So you got these to kind of be aware of as well. So this is why I did my little book on earth grids, and kind of try to classify everything into one compact little book, because it can get quite confusing unless you're kind of trained up in the geomantic arts.
I mean, how do you find, are people quite receptive towards your work? Is there much skepticism?
Yeah, there's a lot of skepticism. Yeah, I mean, there is most interesting things, unfortunately, but you get this in any alternative look at ancient sites, and obviously crop circles are kind of giggled at by people who haven't done the research or the homework on it. But yeah, you do get that. Yeah, and it's a pity. And but you kind of just have to do your thing, and these things have been detected by advanced magnetometers and electric voltometers, ground electrodes, and all this kind of stuff. And this energy can be picked up if one is patient enough. And this was done brilliantly by the late John Burke, who passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. He co-authored the book Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty. And he kind of did proper scientific tests at ancient sites. He originally was part of the BLT research team, the Burke, Levengood and Talbot in New England, and they were crop circle researchers, but scientific. They were academics, doctors, things like this. And they he took that kind of technology they were recording these anomalies in crop circles and applied it to ancient sites. And he did like 2 years solid research, and basically that book has become the Bible of earth energies enthusiasts and geomancers, because it's got the science backing it all up.
Right, but then why do crop circles mainly appear in the UK then?
They do, yeah. Mainly they do. That's a very strange phenomenon. I don't know why that is, but what I do find interesting is that if this is a coincidence, I don't know, but there's more stone circles congregated in the UK than there is anywhere else in the world as well. So not only do we have the most crop circles, we have the most stone circles. And I don't know if that's a coincidence, because loads of these crop circles obviously do actually appear right near stone circles, or they appear on direct alignments between stone circles, or they're on the earth energies that go through the landscape connecting up sites. And often they form kind of geometries over the greater landscape, almost like grids, like geometrical kind of patterns, as though they were kind of deliberately placed. Why that is a whole other question.
Well, that's right. I mean, the whole question as well of how do they move some of these megalithic sites? Okay, a mound is one thing, but when you're talking about Stonehenge, how was it done with technology today would struggle to do what they did?
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's one of the. I think that's one of the key mysteries, what compels people to study and explore these sites is how do they do it? Not even why, but how, just a simple how do they even do this? It's incredible. I mean, the more you travel, the more you realize it's a global phenomenon without any doubt. Incredible. It's almost like there was this megalithic explosion worldwide about 5,000-6,000 years ago. There was another period before that. Now they realize, in the era of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and also possibly many other sites around the world. They're thinking now about 10,000 BC. So we're looking at 12,000 years ago. So there's different phases of like megalithic construction. But how they did it, that is a good question. There's I mentioned the giants earlier. I mean, this may sound weird, fantastical, and sort of, oh God, please, what are you talking about? But, I've done the homework, and there's people like Ross Hamilton, there's Jim Vieira, who's based in Massachusetts, and there's several other people, Steve Quayle and a few others, who've been doing research for many years. And there are thousands of reports of giant skeletons being found in North America, all over the world even. Very tall people, we're talking 8 to 12 feet. Some are even bigger, which go into the realms of kind of, it's just too much to deal with. Some, there's reports in France of some being 24 feet tall humans. There's a great footprint in South Africa that Michael Tellinger has been promoting, which is about 4.5 feet tall, a footprint in solid rock, and you can see the way the foot's gone in. And so you have to kind of question what's going on there. I mean,
well, yeah.
I mean, you really, and it really does. To me, that could give one clue as to how they're giants. They could move things easy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is our past being suppressed then? I mean, I don't see the mainstream, science, discussing, these finds of, large skeletons. But I mean, I've seen it on some of the more obscure alternative sites, shall I say?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is this is a classic thing. Where's the evidence? We need to see some of these skeletons, and that's the problem, because most of them have kind of disappeared. I mean, but so the smoking gun's going to come out soon. There's going to be one that gets discovered and it's going to be promoted. But there's multi-level kind of. It's not just one level of cover-up when it comes to these giant skeletons. There's several levels, which is probably too much to go into tonight. But there's different reasons why they have to cover it up. Different kind of laws have come in to do with the Native Americans as well. So everything is sort of double suppressed, unfortunately, at the moment. However, when I was in America researching this and spent on a 6-week research trip around the whole mound culture area, I went to Pennsylvania, and there's a museum, a medical museum called the Mutter Museum, and just in central Philadelphia. And they're basically there. I found, at last, after my whole trip, a 7'6" skeleton, which came from the area of the mound culture. So although it's not one of the tallest, at last I kind of found one there. And it definitely came from North Kentucky, which is the prime area of the whole Ohio Valley. So yeah, there's something going on. I mean, it's the thing with many different. I mean, it's just classically done really well in the Indiana Jones film, where they've got these vaults full of all these artifacts, and everything is kept quiet about our true history.
That's right.
And I just think, I think the reason people are so compelled by the megalithic sites is that they actually is one of the only ways back to our distant ancestors, to reconnect with them and to reconnect with that part of ourselves, which is technically our bloodline, our family, our relatives. And so, because most of the history has been sort of dismissed and kind of suppressed and pretty much burnt on fires by Christians and other organized religions. And so that's really unfortunate. And I think, sometimes the only thing left is to go back to the old temples of the gods of the ancient times and the people of the ancient times. And I think that's the pull people have to these sites, is that it's about reconnecting, to that enchanted kind of time going back several thousand years.
Well, I mean, how did the ancients survey so accurately in ancient times?
Well, the surveying side of it is fascinating, because again, there's different levels to this. There's one. Some researchers say there's just a classic survey of Britain, say if we focus on Britain, and you can actually sort of mark where all the ancient, particularly certain megalithic sites are, and they all kind of fit into these kind of isosceles triangles. Others suggest there's Pythagorean triangles, like 3, 4, 5 triangles, and 5, 12, 13 as well. And there's different ones as well, all across the landscape. Stonehenge is a key part of that. Silbury Hill is a key part of that. And you kind of realise that maybe, as they said in one of the lost books of the Old Testament, the Book of Enoch, that the angels have gone off to measure with these kind of rods, strings or whatever. So you kind of have to question, why were they doing that? And there's several potential reasons. One of them is just to map the country, for territorial reasons, like we do today, and to have a useful map for people to work with, and they were like markers on a great kind of system. Others suggest they were actually reharmonizing the energies because something had gone wrong. Others, one of the things I believe is that it was actually to do with keeping a whole kind of land enchanted, which is something that, again, John Michel kind of inspired me with in some of in his work with Christine Roan in the book 12 Tribe Nations, and he often talked about it at conferences when he was alive. And so to me, it's partly about enchantment. Sometimes precision placement creates an enchanted, geometrical kind of sacred effect, much like the landscape zodiacs do, and different temples do, and different cathedrals do in relatively more modern times. And so I think there may have been multiple reasons. It could have been another thing is that it could well have been to like attract and charge and kind of keep this charge of energy there.
Okay, Hugh, we're going to have to take a break there. I'm so sorry. We'll be going to be right back. Stay tuned.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome back. I'm still currently joined with Hugh Newman, author of Earth Grids. Hugh, welcome back to the show.
Cheers, thanks.
Hugh, just before the break there, you mentioned the connection with religion, and that some religions have suppressed, well, you feel they have suppressed the knowledge of the megalithic sites. Why do you think that is? What would scare religion into doing such a thing?
Well, I think if you go back to around the 4th, 5th century AD, Christianity was getting a lot stronger, but the pagan sites were still in full swing. The pagans were using the megalithic sites, the mound sites, the holy wells, and they were revering them to their gods, the multiple gods, not the one god. And basically an edict came through, I can't remember exactly who from, but that they were to like reincorporate the sites as Christian temple sites. So it's kind of sneaky. It's like kind of building a new religion on top of an old religious site, and the people are always going to still keep coming back to that site, even if, and so they kind of get influenced, and suddenly they become Christian. And so there's been this going on for a long time. Luckily, lots of sites didn't get fully destroyed, because part of the edict was to actually protect them and actually build upon them or next to them, and just be in the same area. And generally, I think with any this is pretty standard stuff, but any kind of new religion that comes in likes to remove the old one completely from the minds and the consciousness of the old people. And unfortunately, they did that with people like the Mayan and the Inca, and obviously the pre-Druid culture as well of England, and of obviously the multiple amazing cultures of Ireland and Wales. And so, unfortunately, a lot of it's got lost, and there's hardly anything left in many of these cultures. And it's probably had the high wisdom going back tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, which we've now lost. And so, this is just in the last couple of thousand years this has happened, and it's really quite depressing when you think about it. And the Library of Alexandria in Egypt getting burnt down like twice. I mean, Christ, wasn't once enough. And you know, things like this, you have to kind of like question, well, what is the, you know, why do that? You know, surely it's about kind of compassion and understanding. You know, it's what all these religions talk about. Then why not apply that to the pagan cultures, who obviously have been around a lot longer than they have? So yeah, it's frustrating, but you know, it's pretty obvious that organized religion, people aren't taking it too seriously anymore. A lot of people are, obviously, but it's okay, each to their own. You know, people can do their thing. I don't have a problem with it. It's just frustrating that, you know, the historical aspect of it, there's been a lot of destruction of the previous cultures, which is kind of bugs me a little bit.
And you mentioned before, by just going to these sites, it can be a life-changing experience. I mean, you know, can just by touching a megalithic site, you know, can you draw energy that way? And how does it work again?
Yeah, well, it's different, really. Different to each site. It really just depends. You just have to go and check them out yourself. Some people get electric shocks off the stones, even. Some just have like almost like out-of-body experiences. There's a report at Wormwood Hill. It's the hill it's next to Wandlebury, near Cambridge. It's actually in one of Andrew Collins' earlier books. How people, when they walked up there, they had this, they almost like had a full out-of-body experience, and visions of robed druids in a ceremonial fashion and blue lights. And often you get these earth lights, these orbs, which some people, you know, because this energy creates these lights as such, these earth lights, but it also kind of has an altered state of consciousness. And so at the same time, you're having this visionary experience, all this lights happening around you. People interpret that in different ways. And this is part of the, I believe it's also got, this energy does have some intelligence behind it as well. And so, yeah, people have different things at the site. It's just a couple of examples there. Some people just go there and they kind of feel like they're getting healed. Others people feel quite nauseous there and have quite a dark effect on them. Whereas others just feel amazing and highly energized. It just depends. Some people don't feel anything. Most people probably don't. But the energy is there. They do harness this energy. They're often crystalline stones. There's magnetism in a lot of the rock. There's underground water converging, which creates charge on the surface, like electric charge. There's telluric currents, which create charge. There's different, when two types of geology meet, you have what's called a conductivity discontinuity, where the energy increases because you have these magnetic flow lines that are part of the sort of magnetism of the Earth, really. You know, and they kind of, if they move through some ground better than others, they move through more conductive ground where there's metal and crystals and things like that. And then it hits a chalky part where it's more kind of, you know, and so the energy will drop and change, and you get these charge. It's loads of things going on. It gets a bit silly, the amount that goes on, but it's different everywhere you go. You have to kind of go there and spend some time there. Just dowsing rods, you can pretty much. You can get a lot of information from using dowsing rod. It's quite surprising.
And you've got to also go there with an open heart and mind, haven't you? Because like you say, not everyone has the experiences that you've had. But I think with an open mind, you know, you're probably going to get more out of you know, going to visit these amazing sites.
Oh yeah, I mean, some people. I mean, like often I don't feel a thing. The majority of the sites, you know, it's not about, you know, it's just, you know, it's just being aware that these sites were built for that purpose. Some still function, you know, some don't. Some have lost their energy. But what I find really interesting, which people don't sort of realise when they study the energies of these sites, is that they're basically, you know, they still function often fully. They still fully function like they were designed for. They're still drawing the same Earth energy because the Earth constantly spins and creates a magnetic field. Energy moves, so the energy doesn't change that much unless there's like massive movements, earthquake under the ground and things like this. And so the energies are still working. The solar and the lunar energies connect as well. The underground water is pretty much in the same place. So if we knew how, we could actually use them again for what they were originally intended for.
So it sounds like that people were a lot more spiritual, you know, when these ancient sites were being developed, or however they were put together.
Well, I think if you look at the way we build sites today, I don't think there's any, as you might say, spiritual. You might say more geomantic kind of philosophy within the architectural design.
No.
That's not there now, really. It is a little. It's starting to come back, but generally it's not there. So the whole landscape and the cities that get built, and it's really disharmonic energies. But at the sites, the ancient sites, obviously they were working with the sky and the landscape, and they had this whole canvas all around them. There was nothing for miles, you know, and so that they could work in a different way. And I think they worked with the landscape and with the natural energies, and they weren't trying. It wasn't about profit. It wasn't about you know, building as much as possible and development and progress and things like that. It had a whole different angle to it, a whole different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I mean we covered quite a bit there. But how did the ancients, you know, how did they know where these power grids were? I mean, was it just through dowsing, like you've said before, or was there some other way they discovered that these were the right places to build these monuments?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's I talk a little bit just as people are clear on this. There are kind of different grids. I work with a brilliant geomancer called Sean Kerwin on this. People can check out his work at georepairman.com or .co.uk, and he's done some excellent analysis. He's very intuitive, and there's multiple grids. They're all kind of close. They're all at slightly different angles. They kind of some grids sort of don't go. They don't touch the ancient sites. They kind of veer. It's like the ancient site pushes them out and creates this kind of more neutral space where these larger earth energy currents could come through and actually meet and create a kind of vortex. There's also even on henges that are really wide, like around Stonehenge, for instance, or even around Avebury as well, and at Wandlebury in Cambridge. Even the henges can block out these certain grids as well and create a kind of neutral space, because the grids can have, you know, different effects, can be good, can be bad, can be, you know, whatever. But also you get that with the telluric currents as well. Often telluric currents, these magnetic and electric, they kind of fluctuate between the two, come through the earth, and they can't go really below, you know, about 3 or 4 feet in the ground. So wherever there's a henge, like a ditch cut in the ground, circular around a site, they can't get through. And so they kind of hit the side, then follow the path of least resistance. And then if there's a gap, if there's an entrance way into the site, all the energies hitting the outside of the henge all the way around it will all follow the path of least resistance and come in through one entrance into one area of the site. So you get multiple energy lines converging. It's pretty interesting when you get your head around it. It's just this invisible kind of realm we're trying to get our head around. And Sean works with the elemental realm a lot, all the fairies and the elves and things like this. And there is a real kind of, you know, when you open yourself up to it, there is like this level of consciousness, which is that realm, which is the earthly kind of underworld, otherworld realm. Which is really there, and it is intelligent. And these lights, when they move about, they're very intelligent.
The orbs, yeah,
they're called fairies. But we call them orbs now, but they were called fairies and elves and sprites. They were called will-o'-the-wisps and many different things going back thousands of years. But they were always kind of just out of reach of understanding. They were sort of one step ahead, sort of this mystery that never quite gets solved. And so that kind of principle is still at play. But and now we have the crop circles.
Well, yeah. I was going to get sort of connect with that. I mean, in your view, then, do you think these megalithic sites were ways to connect with other dimensions?
It could well be, yeah. I think if you're looking at the dimensions I've been talking about, which is, you know, just the otherworldly, underworld realms, which is, you know, it's kind of been written about for millennia. It's not like new knowledge or kind of new age knowledge or anything. It's kind of been talked about and worked with for thousands of years, you know, even more. And so, yeah, I think that is something we're reconnecting with, and it's why people need to go to these megalithic sites, these ancient sites, because they were built to kind of, you know, with that in mind, and also just being out in nature, just pure nature, obviously does that.
Yeah.
But some people say, and this is what they think may have happened, is that just progress and road building and city building and things like this has actually just driven away that kind of realm. They don't want it. They were being built over, and they haven't got the free reign of the landscape anymore. So there's these kind of things we're not aware of so much. But the traditions are still pretty strong in parts of Ireland and Wales, and in England really, and different parts of Europe as well. I would imagine. But it's kind of been overtaken by this whole one God idea. Which is just a concept, really. Just like, it's not, maybe it is partly true, but then it sort of discredits all the other sort of gods and realms that are obviously all still there as well.
Are these dimensions all positive, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think with anything, there's positive and negative with everything, isn't there? So I think it's just like with energy, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. But I do think that it's good, it's healthy, physically, mentally, psychically healthy to kind of be aware of that kind of realm. And understand it. You don't need to understand it. It's just be aware of it. It's there. It's not like magic. It's not trickery or anything. It's for real. And we've kind of lost these levels of kind of feeling and consciousness as a race. Really, some people have got that a lot. And but generally it's not talked about. It's not taught in schools. And I think these earth energies and these ancient sites and a lot of the mysteries of the past are linked with that. And so it's good to keep that part of the mind open, I think.
Well, you're a crusader for the cause. I've got to give you that. And your journeys just took you all over the world. I mean, what's the most fascinating megalithic site that you've worked on?
Oh God, there's a lot of megalithic sites that I'm just completely blown away by. I can can't really talk about one. I could talk about probably just a quick handful. But I think recently since 2007, I've been traveling to Peru and Bolivia. And so I find the sites there quite remarkable. The megalithic walls, the polygonal walls at places like Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, and Cuzco, Sacsayhuaman, places like that are just completely stunning and almost like beautiful abstract art using 100-ton megalithic blocks built up on top of each other. They're not just like rough-hewn stones like you get in Europe and things like that. They're precision carved, almost like puffed out. They're amazing. And then I recently went, and just something about the precision and the artistic nature of that really gets me. It's like they're just
right. Well, we'll get back into that, Hugh, just after this very quick break. Stay tuned.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the Moore Show website.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined here with Hugh Newman, and don't forget you can call the show as well to speak to Hugh now by calling 0292 000 3666 and text your comments and questions to 07728 758 759. Now, Hugh, just before the break there, I was just asking you about some of the megalithic sites which you find pretty amazing, and I think you were just mentioning some sites there in Peru.
Yeah, there's some incredible sites in Peru and Bolivia. Sacsayhuaman, the whole Cuzco area. It's almost like a megalithic town. Cuzco, it's incredible. It has this incredible polygonal kind of jigsaw construction that goes thousands of years old, and no one really knows how they could move some of these blocks. I mean, apparently the Inca, when they arrived there, didn't even know who built it. It was ancient then. So these are pre-Inca sites there. If you go further north, if you go through Ecuador and then through Colombia, I visited Colombia last year or the year before. I went to a site called San Agustin, which is southern Colombia, not too far from the Ecuador border. But that place was just what? I mean, it's got these incredible megalithic carvings, these statues with these crazy fangs, big eyes. This is like several, 30 square kilometers or more, I think, of that whole area. There's also these ancient dolmens there, which look just like the ones you get in England and Europe and Korea and places like this. And they just weren't. How did they get there? Suddenly, there's all this British-looking megalithic, rough-hewn dolmens, passage graves like West Kennet Long Barrow, but smaller there. And then, so that's a very, very strange, interesting place. And then a while later, I visited Costa Rica. And in southern Costa Rica, you have these huge megalithic spheres, these big megalithic stone spheres, very similar to the ones you see at the start of Indiana Jones. He's running down that tunnel. That's kind of what that was based on. It was these spheres. About 300 have been discovered there. Some are 8 to 10 feet tall, perfectly spherical. Some are the size of, this kind of size as well.
And how does science suggest they got there? I mean, what's the scientific analyst behind that?
I mean, the more you look, the more you just, if this is what they could do with stone, what could they do with other things? I mean, there's some incredible gold has been discovered down there as well. But what scientists say, I mean, they've actually did, if you head further north from there, go into like Mexico, in Central America, you have this whole Olmec region along the Gulf Coast, and science, i.e. Horizon, BBC Horizon program about 10, 12 years ago, went to the Olmec area to try and carve these incredible, to recarve like that. And they got these huge, ancient, going back about 2000 BC, these huge heads that precision carved, about 20 to 40 tons apiece, that were transported about 20 miles, and then they were constructed and placed. And so they got a bunch of people from university and stone carvers and things like this that made this TV program just to go in there because they're scientists. We're going to prove how easy it is. How could the ancients be cleverer than us and all this rubbish? And they got completely and utterly humiliated, and they couldn't carve the stone. It was too hard with the tools they would have had. They couldn't transport it more than about 50 yards. It was a joke, and it was hilarious. And it's on YouTube if people want to check it out. And so that kind of, these are like top university professors and stonemasons, and so I find stuff like that very interesting and very joyous as well. Do
you think that some of these sites that you've mentioned there were possibly remnants from Atlantis?
Yeah, there's always the A word always pops into these kind of sites.
I'm sorry to mention it, yes.
No, it's great. No, I mean, I like it, but it's. I think you have to kind of, apparently, weirdly, there's actually been a book done by Jim Allen, who we're connecting with at the moment, about a future tour with him. He believes in Bolivia around Lake Titicaca. That's where Atlantis once was. Whereas George Erickson and another co-author have written a book about Atlantis in Costa Rica. And then other people have said it's in Mexico. Others have said it's in the Bahamas. Others have said it's in Cuba, like Andrew Collins. It's in the Atlantic Ocean. It's under the South Pole. It's in, Italy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, there is, I think, I'm kind of over trying to work out where it is. I'm really interested in that time period that was from, which is about 10,000 BC to about 8,000 BC, when the whole destruction of Atlantis supposedly took place. And now there are sites matching that date. This is what is really, blows my mind, like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, for instance. And also now they're realizing that agriculture developed in Peru about that time as well. So they were growing. They're probably megalithic, constructing back then.
Well, that's right. That's right. I've got to say this as well. So, sorry to sort of put in there, but I mean, spiritually, what could it teach us about the past as well, about the way that we lived? I mean, was there a better way of just being? Do you know what I mean? Have we lost our sense of who we are?
I think we have a little bit. I think we're just too busy and we've got too many things going on. I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, I just I'm really busy all the time, but I kind of get excited by things and get a bit of mania with the megaliths. I have to go everywhere and see them and talk about them and research them. But yes, I think that's correct. I think people had much more time in nature. They didn't have TV or computer screens to distract them. They were staring at the sky, probably studying the stars. They would see things in the landscape. It was all natural light. So they wouldn't have any light pollution. So they would see stuff. If there was weird light phenomena in this landscape, they'd see it. And I think they studied, and they had this sky and landscape connection, which we don't have. We just gaze out of windows at street lamps and car parks and things like that. We don't really have that kind of deep connection. And in this climate, it's not surprising. I mean, but back then it was 5,000 years ago. It was a much more it was warmer. It was a lot warmer. It was a few degrees warmer, and it was drier, and so people could actually live outside, and they'd be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And all from the pyramids to the many of the megalithic sites that you've mentioned there, it just seems to me that there was a great technology that existed, in ancient civilization. And what's your take on that?
There's like a landscape technology. I mean, there's different technologies, and I think we have to call it that now. I think think when you look at the way, look at the pyramids in Egypt. I mean, please, it's just. There was a high technology that built those, and they're so well built that even modern technology would find it difficult to destroy them, because there's so much rock there, and it's so constructed so precisely. And so there's the physical technology like that, but then there's also the energetic technology, which we're talking about, the earth energies. We're talking about, even water moving. They would put water fast through different channels around the pyramids. They'd also do this in Peru and Bolivia, especially at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca. And that would create charge and energy. And if you get the right temperature of water, which is something, a brilliant researcher called Buster Nolan, who does research on trees and how, if you get the certain temperature of water, you can actually float almost anything on it, but it has to be exactly and kept at a certain temperature. I think it's about 4 degrees. And so it becomes more buoyant, it becomes stronger as such. And so there's evidence that they could have been using that to move things around. But the speed of water moving through small channels creates energy as well. And I think they were using it, and this is what a lot of people have come around to now. They were using it to charge up their seeds and grains, and it was fertility technology, really. And so, that was practical and it was useful. It would increase the yield of the crops. It would increase fertility of the farm animals and even the humans. If there were any problems with that, it'd be like a health technology using energy. But it also had a consciousness effect. It would stimulate consciousness, and this has been tested and proven, and this is actually fact in scientific data backing it up. But also there's like what some people call a spiritual technology, where the geometry and the harmony and the 3D geometry and the acoustics and the sound would actually have an enchanting effect. And I think this is one of the real lost technologies of the ancients, is the more spiritual enchantment technology.
Enchantment, that sounds interesting. So were these builders also applying the principles of enchanting the landscape then, do you reckon?
Yeah, they were definitely doing it through the landscape, and I think they did it on multiple levels. Obviously, you look at what enchantment really means. It's about song, it's about sound, and when you look at these sites and you actually start decoding them, this is something that I must refer. Paul Devereaux, for instance, he actually did a TV program on it called Stone Age Soundtracks, and a book about it as well. And they're designed acoustically. It's almost like they're designed for the human voice. They're like when you sing in them or chant in them using all the different frequencies, they actually they resonate to the human voice. So they had this brilliant understanding of acoustics back then as well. Even at stone circles, this works, and in megalithic chambers, which look kind of rough and a bit thrown together, but they're not. They're precision engineered, musical acoustic devices that would then enhance consciousness, and it would create this enchantment around not just at the site and the local community, but the stories, for instance. around the whole kind of West Country. There's something called that John Michel called the Circle of Perpetual Choirs, and there were 12 sites over like maybe 100-mile radius. This big circle. Glastonbury and Stonehenge were two of the bottom sites on the greater circle, and there was a place called Whiteleaf Oak right in the middle. And it was said that there was chanting going on at one of these sites at all times, and so it created this circle of enchantment, circle of perpetual choirs, and and then you look at the prehistory of Egypt, the deep prehistory, going back beyond the pharaohs. There's stories and legends of non-stop singing and chanting at the temples there to maintain this enchantment throughout the land. And it would spread through the land like an energy wave. And I think, obviously, the Gregorian chanting was a later sort of copy of that, probably, or it could have been inspired by that. It's the same kind of principles at play. But I don't know if it was religious back then. I think it was just something people did. They wanted to do it. It felt good. People were all in it together, designing, constructing these sites to create this good energy, this good vibe. I think that's what it boils down to. And we live in we have a lot of disharmony, and in today's world, through the nature of construction and building and everything, and we just learned to live with the stress, the geopathic stress, really, rather than actually do something to kind of heal that.
Okay then, Hugh. Well, I want to get more into, after the ad break, some of the work you're doing now as well, and also to talk about your conferences. But just before the ad break, just talking about the enchantment there, then, how can we sort of recreate this enchantment in today's world, do you reckon?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think just level of awareness is where it's at, really, to start with. It's a tough one, that, because society is as it is, and there's not much we can't do that much to kind of change that. I mean, we can a little bit. I mean, some people are saying like the fall of the current empire is falling, and maybe there's an opportunity there to bring something more real, more kind of spiritual, more enchanting back in after that. But, I just think, people need to kind of look after themselves. They need to tune in, go and visit these sites, spend time in nature, spend time at these sites. Just give yourself time. I think sometimes time is the great kind of enchanter, just giving yourself time to go and do these things. Whereas we just get so caught up in the busyness of the world, where although technology is supposed to make our lives easier and we do less work, we end up doing more. It doesn't quite make sense. It's not what Tomorrow's World used to tell me.
No, indeed, it's not. Well, okay, we're going to take a break there, Hugh, and we'll be right back after this.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Okay, welcome back. I'm still currently joined here by Hugh Newman, author of Megalithomaniac. Okay, Hugh, are you there still?
I'm still here, yeah.
Okay, so just moving on there, Hugh. What is it that your journey through all this then, going through all these ancient sites, traveling all across the world, how has it changed you?
I think it's just made me realize how what a vast megalithic culture it really was, and how all my life I've just been told, basically, if you look at the very basic histories, like there was the dinosaurs, then there was cavemen, and then there was the Romans, and then there was, history after that. There was nothing really kind of in between, and I didn't really question it. I just didn't get it. But it's just by realizing there's multiple levels of sophisticated, amazing spiritual cultures going way back, it's kind of opened me up to the world. Really, it's sort of given me a reason to kind of explore and connect. And I get called to places. I have to go to like South America or Central America or somewhere, and I think it's just helped me understand the nature of the planet and the nature of the human race, and how it's so ancient and we just don't know it, and it's been sort of blocked off from us. And I think I'm not having that. Basically, I'm gonna go and explore.
Absolutely not. And do you think it's a way of reconnecting with our past lives?
Yes, some people do say that. Yeah, some people do suggest that that is part of it. It could be why certain people get called to certain places, because they had a past life there. I mean, I'm also very interested in just the fact that my ancestors probably, have built Stonehenge. They knew the people who did, or they probably were involved in some other site in the country. It seems like it was a cultural thing, and you look at the size of the population back then; it was much less than it is today in Britain, particularly. And so we all had this connection to it, and I think we've just lost that, and it's just like something to draw us back into the landscape. And I think the crop circles do that. I think the crop circles are the most wonderful modern phenomenon currently taking place on the planet. And people don't get excited by it anymore. They just think they're all man-made hoaxes and stuff like that. I'm like, what? They go back hundreds of years, and I think people don't realise that is the magic is back in the landscape thanks to the circles, and like people are just ignoring them, and it just really frustrates me. And then the problem with it is all these it all becomes very new age. It all becomes very kind of weird, and has all these things attached to it, when actually just looking at it as a phenomenon, it's the ultimate currently happening on Earth right now, and it's in our backyard. So I think we should appreciate that and study that, because that might hold the clues to what we're looking for and what we need.
Absolutely. I mean, the crop circles to me is one of the most interesting phenomena that I've looked into as well. And the way that you've tied this in with your work, those energy lines. I mean, are they coming back here to keep tabs on the working megalithic sites? Is it a place for them to recharge?
It could be. It's like, I mean, it's different ways to look at it. But one of the ways I like to look at this is that there's an area of the landscape that's just been a wheat field for hundreds of years, or thousands probably, and so there's a power spot in the middle of that wheat field, which is the ley lines, energy lines, underground water, probably geology, crazy stuff going on, and yet it's in the middle of a field, so the farm can't go in there. So the crop circles are marking what needs attention by us humans to bring more balance and enchantment. It's almost like whoever's creating the crop circles is drawing us out into that part of the landscape for human attention, which is often you can then use intention into the landscape to create magic and harmony and singing and things like this, and meditation. And that actually, it's not just for your benefit; it's for the benefit of the greater whole, the greater energetic landscape. So there's one way of looking at it. There's different ways. I mean, I think there's a really crazy theory, which I kind of mention when people ask me about it.
Absolutely.
Is that the idea that the crystalline nature of many of the megalithic sites, and also the underground water, that it records things. It kind of, it can hold intention and programming, like crystals used in computers for that reason, and watches. So it can hold, and then it can be released at a certain time. And so you can actually the ancients could have encoded all these crop circles, intended them within the crystals in the megalithic rocks. And actually, now is the time they're supposed to be released, or someone has worked out how to release them at megalithic sites unknowingly, by saying something or knocking something or turning a handle or whatever, and it's opened up this thing through that goes down the energy lines into the landscape. So that's pretty crazy theory, but I thought I'd throw it in there.
Well, no, it's all very interesting, and the orbs as well. I mean, are the orbs connected with the UFO sightings? What are the orbs? Are the UFOs and orbs all interdimensional, objects? Are they? Have they not come from, outer space as such? Is it within our own space?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, this is one of the things I've been researching recently, is that whole idea of what is this we're talking about here? What's going on? And there are obviously reports of nuts and bolts spacecraft. You go back in time, I've been involved in this Ancient Aliens TV program in America, and that's their main thing, that the ancients had all these alien, physical alien kind of connections, and there was UFOs and things like that. But there's another side to it, which is what's called daemonic reality, which is something that Patrick Harper brilliantly wrote about a decade or two ago. And it kind of, the whole idea of these energies and these lights that we see today, we may, Carl Jung even went into this, and some of the early psychologists, and that what we see today, because it's in our consciousness and our kind of culture, is the UFO thing. Whenever there's any kind of light anywhere, it's aliens, it's UFOs, Whereas 100 years ago, or 500 years ago, whatever, they saw them as something else. There was no UFO. They didn't know what that was. It was all fairies and elves and sprites and will-o'-the-wisps and things like that. And other cultures may have interpreted different things. You get Christian cultures who kind of interpret it as the Virgin Mary, apparitions and things like this. And so depending on where you are and what is in your consciousness, you kind of interpret them in different ways. But there's certainly some strange unknown kind of intelligent energy we're working with it, and if it's alien, I don't know. If it's otherworldly, I don't know. Maybe it's part of ourselves. Maybe it's part of Gaia, the earth, the energy of the earth, the intelligence of that. So yeah, it's just, there's different obviously ways to look at that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you look, and I'll going back here a little bit, just, not trying to recap over what's been said before, but, you look at some of these skill sets to create such sites. Again, to me, it just doesn't seem possible that, we had such technology that it must, it just seems to have come from somewhere else.
Well, yeah, this is what a lot of people say nowadays, that people just assume, it must be aliens. We weren't clever enough to do that then, but I don't know. I think maybe we were. I mean, there's different levels of technology as well as that we talked about earlier, the physical technology, the spiritual, the kind of energetic technologies. But there's another thing which kind of grabbed my attention, and is like a enchantment technology, which we kind of touched on earlier.
Yes.
There's these landscape zodiacs, which kind of completely blow my mind. I lived right on one in Glastonbury for many years. I lived in Pisces on Wirral Hill. I lived in Aquarius in Glastonbury. I lived on the Girt Dog of Langport in a place called Wag Drove, which is actually on the tail of the dog, seriously. And there's a whole great unicorn effigy, which has now been discovered, which overlays the kind of dog within the landscape. And you can clearly see these if you just have a certain type of map. You can see where the roads and the rivers and mounds mark certain things, and there's earthworks that shape it. And this is like 12 miles wide is the main 12 sign zodiac,
incredible,
crossing the whole Glastonbury landscape. And then further just southwest of that is the Girt Dog of Langport, which is where I lived. It's also overlaid by a large unicorn, which is completely mental,
yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. What the hell? And like, these are there, and these are like were built into the landscape, whether they were built with design or whether we are just influenced by the astrological energies that permeate our existence through the cosmos. So we just naturally shape these in the landscape is a good question. There's, according to Anthony Thorley, there are 60 of these in Britain. These lands. I live where I live now in East Anglia. I'm researching and writing a book about the area around here. There's 3 zodiacs. I'm surrounded by 3 zodiacs. There's one down south, which is the Chipping Ongar zodiac. There's one northeast of me, which is the Bury St Edmunds zodiac, and there's one west of me, which is the Nuthampstead zodiac, which is just below Royston. And the Bury St Edmunds one and the Royston one both are part of the Michael line axis that goes across southern Britain. And so there's a lot going on in the landscape.
Yes. Yeah. Were you clear? Yeah, well, you clearly enjoy what you're doing, and you know you're very passionate about it as well, and that comes across in in this interview. I mean, what's your end goal? Would you say?
Well, I just think just to keep researching and keep bringing to light many of these mysteries that are in the landscape all over the world, really. But even, people in their backyard, there's probably megaliths there and mounds and stuff like this that people don't even realise. Probably treasure there. Who knows? So many levels of history and prehistory to kind of look at. That it's everywhere. You don't have to travel far to find some really amazing stuff. People don't even realise they're living inside one of the signs of the zodiac somewhere in England or Britain, and yet, oh my God, it's quite a revelation when you realise you've been living in like the Aries effigy all your life, or something like that, or you've been living on where these two great energy lines cross you didn't even know existed, and so it's worth checking out the invisible realms, not just the sort of realms we can see with our eyes.
Absolutely, and yourself as well. You've gone through a spiritual transformation. I can tell that just from speaking to yourself, and it's really shaped you in the way you come across in your books as well. So again, that leads on to your conferences. And when's the next couple of conferences taking place?
Well, we do one in Glastonbury every year. This year is on the 18th and 19th of May. We do actually do 5 days of tours now. We don't hold back anymore. We start on the Friday. We do a tour on the Friday to Stanton Drew and Stony Littleton, megalithic sites, and we do 2-day conference on the Saturday, Sunday, which is pretty intensive. But it's right in the heart of Glastonbury, so you're right in this cool, funky town, which I've lived in. I lived in for like 8 years.
That's a great place, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we do 4 more days of tours. We have private access to Stonehenge. We have expert speakers. They come on the tour and guide the tours. So we have like a whole week of fun, megalithic fun, really. We also, just through the nature of obviously Megalithomania, we get out and we do other tours now. We're doing one in Ireland in August, in the second part of August, with Glenn and Cameron Broughton. We've been working with Andrew Collins. We're going to go to Göbekli Tepe. This is that incredible ancient megalithic site, which is 12,000 years old. We're going there in September the 9th to the 20th. With him, and we're doing a whole tour around Turkey and some of the megalithic sites there, which are really similar to Peru. Some of them, it's crazy. And then we're going to go down to Baalbek as part of the same tour to see which is the biggest megaliths in the world, weighing up to 1,200 tons, precision carved 1,200-ton blocks. Built into this huge temple and quarry nearby, so that's quite exciting.
Incredible.
And then we're doing another conference. I'll just throw these at the people if they want to come and join us and have some fun. We're doing one in America on the 5th, 6th of October with 3 days of tours to all the megaliths of New England. And that's with Robert Schalk, John Anthony West, and John Martineau's coming over from England. A whole bunch of really interesting, really cool speakers. And then we're off to Peru and Bolivia. This is my, probably my favourite place at the moment. And one of your guests who's been on before, Brian Forrester.
Oh yes, I know Brian. Yes,
we work with Brian, and we do an annual trip out there to Peru, Bolivia, that whole Nazca, all that whole area.
Okay. Well, what we'll do, Hugh, is we're going to put all these links onto our website, and again, anyone that wants to listen to this previous this show, there'll be links on there as well. And I just want to say to you, Hugh, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really interesting interview, and and it all seems to come down to oneness.
Yeah, and a megalithomaniac style.
Hugh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Okay, well, my next guest coming up after the ad break is Eric Altman, and again, he'll be getting into oneness, his spiritual teachings, his spiritual awakening, and the path that led him on to this journey. So stay tuned.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.